The moment your net worth started climbing past what everyone around you was making, something quietly shifted inside you. You stopped wanting to talk about money at dinner tables, at family events, at the barbershop, or anywhere else people were listening. Not because you were embarrassed, but because something deeper and more powerful was finally starting to make sense to you at a level most people never reach. The wealthiest people you will ever encounter in your entire lifetime are the ones you will never be able to identify just by looking at them in a crowd. They drive paid-off cars, live in modest homes, and their monthly investment contributions are higher than most people's entire annual salaries combined. They do not announce their net worth, they do not post their portfolio online, and they do not explain their financial decisions to anyone who did not directly ask them. What you're about to learn is not just about money, it's about the invisible psychology that permanently separates the people who build real wealth from everyone else around them. And the first thing you need to understand is this: visibility is the enemy of wealth, and most people are losing the financial game because they simply cannot stop being seen. Marcus was 28 years old when he landed his first real salary, $72,000 a year at a logistics company in Atlanta, Georgia. The moment that first check cleared, he bought a BMW, upgraded his apartment, and started building a lifestyle that finally matched the image he had always carried in his head. His Instagram showed exactly the life he had always wanted, and for the first time in his adult life, people were finally paying attention to him. What Marcus did not realize is that every dollar he spent performing wealth was a dollar he was stealing directly from the actual act of building it. His car payment was $780 a month, his rent was $2,100, and after taxes and bills, he was investing exactly $0 into any asset. But the attention felt so rewarding that he kept going, because looking rich gave him the validation he had quietly been starving for his entire life growing up with nothing. Meanwhile, across town, a man named Joseph was making $54,000 a year at a mid-level accounting firm and doing something completely invisible that nobody around him could see. Joseph was investing $600 every single month into a low-cost index fund, keeping his personal expenses completely flat and telling absolutely no one what he was doing with his money. He drove the same 2014 Honda Civic he had owned since college, lived in a one-bedroom apartment, and brought his lunch to work 5 days a week without exception. His coworkers joked about him being cheap, his family worried that he was struggling, and his friends stopped inviting him to expensive dinners he always quietly declined. But every single month, without fail, Joseph's net worth was climbing, slowly, invisibly, and with a compound momentum that most people never get the patience to feel. This is the first paradox of real wealth. The people who look the richest are usually the furthest from financial freedom, and the people who look ordinary are often the ones actually winning. There's a specific moment that happens when you start building real wealth in silence, a moment where your entire relationship with attention quietly and permanently changes. You stop needing people to see you succeed because you can see yourself succeeding in the numbers that actually matter: your net worth, your investment returns, your monthly savings rate. Joseph hit his first $50,000 in investments at 31, and he told absolutely no one, not his girlfriend, not his mother, not his closest friend from college. Not because he was secretive by nature, but because he had already learned one of the most important lessons that quietly wealthy people understand at a fundamental level. The moment you tell people about your money, their relationship with you changes, and almost never in the way you think it will when you imagine the conversation. People start making assumptions about what you can afford, what you should give, what you should do, and how you should live, and every single one of those assumptions is a leak in your financial wealth-building system. The older generation of wealthy people, the ones who built real fortunes across decades rather than months, understood this principle better than almost anyone alive today. They called it discretion, and they passed it down not as a tip or a trick, but as a fundamental rule of financial survival that the modern world has almost completely forgotten. Marcus, meanwhile, had gotten a $15,000 raise at 31 and used every dollar of it to lease a newer car and move into a larger apartment he couldn't quite afford. His savings account sat at $3,200, his credit card debt had quietly climbed to $11,000, and his investment account had never once crossed the $1,000 mark. But the attention felt so rewarding that he kept going, because looking rich gave him the validation he had quietly been starving for his entire life growing up with nothing. The problem is that looking wealthy and building wealth are not just different things, they're opposite things, pulling you completely opposite directions at the exact same time. Every dollar you spend to maintain a public image is a dollar that could have been compounding inside a brokerage account, growing your net worth every single month without you lifting a single finger. The mathematics of compound interest don't care how good you look. They only care how consistently you show up, how much you put in, and how long you let it grow. And Joseph was showing up every single month with a quiet discipline that was building something invisible, something that would eventually become impossible to ignore. By the time Joseph turned 34, his investment portfolio had crossed $120,000, and something had started happening to the way he thought about every financial decision. He had developed what quietly wealthy people call a net worth lens, the habit of seeing every purchase not just as a cost, but either an asset or a liability in his overall financial picture. A $60 dinner out wasn't just $60, it was $60 that could have been earning 8% per year in an index fund for the next 20 years. A $500 impulse purchase wasn't just $500, it was potentially $2,000 of future wealth he was choosing to trade for something temporary and completely forgettable. This is not about being cheap or living without joy. It's about developing a relationship with money that most people are never taught and most schools never bother to explain. The wealthy see money as a tool that quietly works for them over time, not as a reward to be spent the moment it arrives and replaced the moment it disappears from the account. Marcus came to Joseph at 35 with a financial crisis, $19,000 in debt, a lease he couldn't get out of, and a job that suddenly felt far less secure than it once had. He asked Joseph how he seemed so calm, so unbothered, so completely stable, and Joseph showed him a number on his screen that Marcus had never expected to see from a man who drove a Honda Civic. The portfolio had crossed $180,000, built silently, invisibly, month after month, while everyone around Joseph had simply assumed he was just getting by like everyone else. Marcus stared at the screen for a long time without saying a single word, because in that moment, everything he had ever believed about what wealth looked like collapsed completely around him. He had spent 6 years building an image, while Joseph had spent 6 years building actual assets, and the distance between those two outcomes was bigger than either of them had prepared for. The silence between them in that moment communicated something that no personal finance book, no investment course, and no financial advisor had ever managed to say clearly enough out loud. Real wealth is not what people can see. It's what quietly compounds in the background of your life while you stay focused, disciplined, and completely invisible to everyone watching. And once you understand that at a deep enough level, you will never be able to look at money the same way again because the entire game completely changes for you. There's a specific financial cost that nobody talks about when they discuss showing off wealth, and it goes far beyond the price tag of whatever you happen to be buying. When you perform wealth publicly, you invite a level of social pressure that quietly chips away at your financial decisions in ways you won't notice until the damage has already been done. Your friends expect you to split bottles you can't afford. Your family expects you to cover expenses that were never your responsibility. And your partner expects a lifestyle that was never going to be sustainable. Every one of those expectations comes with a social tax, a cost you pay not in dollars, but in the slow erosion of the financial boundaries that protect your entire wealth-building system from the inside. Joseph avoided all of this entirely by staying invisible, and the invisibility gave him something that Marcus had been desperately searching for without even knowing what to call it: financial freedom of choice. He didn't have to say yes to things that didn't serve his financial goals, because no one around him knew enough about his money to make any demands on it whatsoever. At 37, Joseph made a decision that permanently changed the direction of his financial life. He took a portion of his portfolio and quietly invested in his first rental property. He didn't announce it, he didn't post about it, and when his coworkers asked what he had done over the weekend, he said he had been doing some home projects around the house. The rental income started arriving at $1,400 a month, and he added it silently to his investment contributions, compounding everything faster than he had originally planned.
This is what staying invisible actually buys you, not just peace and not just privacy, but the financial and mental space to make moves that visible people never get the opportunity to make. Because when everyone knows what you have, everyone suddenly has an opinion about what you should do with it, and those opinions will cost you more than you will ever be able to calculate. By the time Joseph turned 40, his net worth had quietly crossed $650,000, built without a single post, announcement, or moment of public celebration anywhere. He still drove a car that made people underestimate him in every room he entered, and he still dressed in a way that let him blend into any crowd completely unnoticed. But inside, he had something that Marcus, who was still rebuilding from debt at 40 years old, had been searching for his entire adult life: complete and total financial confidence. Not the fake confidence that comes from a new watch or a luxury apartment, the real kind that comes from knowing your money is working for you whether you're awake or asleep. Joseph didn't need to be seen because his assets spoke for themselves in the only language that actually matters in the long run: compound returns, passive income, and a growing net worth.
The richer he became, the more invisible he got, not because he was hiding, but because he had finally understood the deepest truth about what it means to build real, lasting wealth. Wealth is not a performance, and it never was. It is a practice, a quiet and consistent and deeply disciplined practice that rewards the people who stay focused and punishes the people who stay distracted. The world wants you to be visible. Social media was built to make you perform, and every single advertisement you see today is designed to make you spend money proving something to people who are not thinking about you. But the people who win financially are the ones who opt out of that performance entirely, who decide that the only audience that matters is the version of themselves standing 10 years from now. If you are watching this right now and you feel the pull to start quietly building instead of loudly performing, then you are already further along than you actually think. The first move is not a financial product, not an investment account, not a course. It is a single decision to stop spending your energy on being seen and start building the kind of wealth that nobody can take away. Subscribe to this channel because every single week we break down the exact mindset, habits, and financial moves that quietly wealthy people use to build lives that most people around them will never see coming. The richer you become, the more invisible you have to get, and the people who understand that truth are the ones who will win this game long after everyone else has stopped playing.